since January 6th, you've been working, as a part of the hearings, et cetera. This hasn't ended for you, but I'm wondering if it feels like it's been a year, and what any of your chief takeaways or memories are on this day.
Yeah, a couple, somewhat random. I remember waiting in the committee room for us to go back, and we heard the vice president say, we've got to go back and finish the job. And for many of my colleagues that day, we were saying things like, there is no way in the world that they would have fully secured the Capitol. It's a big place. They could hide any number of places and sort of the lone wolf attackers, but they went back. And that's sort of the sense. But I remember saying, I was doing an interview, a radio interview, and at that moment it hit me, and it's sort of the perspective now. I said, what does it tell the rest of the world that I'm sitting here waiting for the National Guard so that I can go back and vote on a peaceful transfer of power? As I walk back, Statutory Hall, all the statues were covered with powder, and someone said, don't touch your face. And it's because that powder was what happens to tear gas when it settles. So instead of going into the chambers, I walked around toward the speaker's lobby. And, this sort of sunk in stages. But what I saw as I walked toward the speaker's lobby was all of the residue from the moment when the officer shot the woman as she reached, and she was killed. And you could see the after effects. Hearing when the glass broke and you could hear the tear gas canisters and the doors being pounded on. At the peak moment, I remember hearing one of my colleagues say, so when does the effing cavalry get here? It never came. And there's a lot of issues with the fact that the cavalry never came. Stories that the Department of Defense and the White House didn't want the National Guard here because they either wanted to use it to protect the Trump protesters, or they didn't like the image of the National Guard. I'm not sure how they like the image of Trump supporters with Confederate flags beating Capitol Police.
Right.
I think I have to, I have to say about when the president was here today, and it sounds very funny to say, but I did sort of run into him as he was walking out, and I got a chance to talk to him for several minutes. And he talked about the Capitol Police. Now, remember, 140 of them were injured, and we lost a couple to the suicide and its aftermath. And the thing I said to him was, as he knows, I'm not sure I'd be here without the Capitol Police, but I'm not sure if our country would be here. The Capitol Police and the District Police may have not just saved members and staff, they may have saved our country. The insurrectionists were about 60 feet away from, in order of constitutional succession, number 2, number 3, and number 4. And they didn't come for tea. They had bear spray, they had restraints, they had guns, they had stun guns, they had Molotov cocktails, they had pipe bombs. An amazing day to look back on.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel as far as the hearings? Clearly, I mean, we just had some more bombshell information in just the last handful of days. What's your level of confidence or feeling like things are progressing in a favorable way, from your opinion, in this investigation, getting the information, getting to the bottom of this?
I think it's just cementing what we knew almost immediately during the day of January 6th a year ago, and in its aftermath. I rode my bike around the Capitol on the morning of January 6th. I got off, I walked around. I was in jeans and a cap and a sweatshirt, and I heard what they were saying. The insurrectionists were saying they wanted to lynch the vice president. They wanted to shoot Nancy Pelosi. They wanted to kill people like me. And so I went in the office and I saw the president speak to the rally. And when he was done, I said, he just sicked 20,000 people on me. But later that day, the days after, Mr. McCarthy and Mr. McConnell both laid responsibility primarily with the president. We forget that, but everything we're learning now cements that fact that the president's staff, his family, his political and media supporters, we're all saying the same thing. You've got to stop this. It's gone too far. And primarily it's your responsibility. The committee's doing an extraordinary job substantiating that point. And given the opportunity, and they're moving toward that end, we'll continue to learn more. But in the final analysis, I think it will lead back to what we first thought. The President of the United States initiated a violent coup attempt that came very close to succeeding.
This morning, the president, I mean, without saying Trump's name, he called it out. He was like, he said it very plainly that this has divided us. He thought one thing, the misinformation has continued to sow this discord. As a citizen, I still feel like we are very polarized, but I'm wondering if in this time, as this investigation's unfolded, has any of that changed? Would a January 6th happen again? Or do you feel any change in the water levels as far as that part of our country that exists to sort of, create the disruption and trauma that you saw firsthand on the 6th?
Look, the polarization has always been there. The president poured gasoline on that fire in his President Trump in his election and in his 4 years as president. He fed an anger that existed. I think he fueled a dark side of this country that still exists. And I don't know that we can ever reach those who are so far out there that they think it's okay to do what took place January 6th, but we have to try. There have to be healing efforts. There have to be attempts at building coalitions to get good things done. I have hope that we passed an infrastructure bill toward the end of last year. That gave me hope. I was the sponsor of the Act for ALS, which had more bipartisan co-sponsors of any bill that has been introduced in the last 2 years. That gives me hope. But on the other hand, I still see that dark force out there. And even if there wasn't as big a force coming toward the Capitol, I think most members recognize that the threats have quadrupled toward us. But they know where we live. We're public figures. If they really want us, so be it. But we can't be afraid. We have to act. There's things to do. And you can't let the bad guys win. So that's going to be our watchword. There's work to do, and we're going to do it.